This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to
We're Watching Here.
This is Opinionated Movie Talk with Chris and Perry. My name is Chris Williams. With me, he's the snooch to my nooch, Perry Seibert.
Snooty boogies.
I could not figure out what to do, because Jay and Silent Bob was just too obvious. But I don't think either one of us wanted to be T.S. or Brody, so I just went with something that was off the top of my head. Yeah.
Good call.
Today we are going to be continuing our 5 from 95 series with Kevin Smith's Mallrats. If you have not listened to our take on David Fincher's 7 a few weeks ago, go back and listen to that when you're done. It was a really fun episode. Thank you all for your patience as we kind of navigate the pandemic and technical difficulties. We're going to get episodes out when we get them out, and so just bear with us, and we hope you are still all safe at home and watching a lot of movies. So, Perry, let's kick this off the way we usually do. What have you been watching?
I want to talk about what I'm going to be watching.
Okay.
Because I could talk about, I actually saw The High Note, which is coming out today, I believe. Available for rent, the Dakota Fanning movie that I don't want to talk about. So let's talk about what I'm going to be watching, which is Father's Day coming early to the Seibert household for my pre-order of the new Criterion Blu-ray of the Scorsese shorts. Arrived today in my mailbox less than an hour ago from when we recorded, and I am eager to dive into this collection of student films and some early documentaries. I'm excited because it contains pretty much the last really available thing by him that I've never seen, which is his first student film, What's a Nice Girl Like You Doing in a Place Like This. I've never seen it in any format, and I'm super excited to finally see it tonight.
Oh, nice. I have seen Italian American, and that might be it for the shorts for me on Scorsese.
That's a good one.
But I do really like that. I'm jealous of you. I'm sure that will be a lot of fun to watch.
Yes.
How
about you?
Well, I was actually sent a screener of The High Note to watch and ran out of time, so I can't talk about that. I did watch a few episodes of the new Steve Carell comedy Space Force, but I don't want to talk about that. A lot of things I have seen you can read about. I have a review of The Lovebirds. I have some Spielberg pieces I have been working on. I've been watching a lot of old school Steven Spielberg. Those are all up at BHM Pop Culture. But Perry, I also want to talk about what I'm going to be watching. And this is honestly, it's kind of corporate shill time, but I was really surprised when I checked out HBO Max, which launched today as we're recording. I had really not given this a ton of thought. I knew HBO was switching from HBO Now or Go or to HBO Max, but really, to me, all that meant was you're getting some Batman movies and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I was really pleasantly surprised at the catalog they have on that site. I think someone counted, and it's about 1,600 movies. And, the obvious stuff is there. You've got your Harry Potter, you've got Batman movies, you've got all the regular Warner Brothers stuff you would expect, although they did miss a great chance to co-brand and put the Mad Max movies on HBO Max, which, whatever, they can do that. But this has, what I'm really excited is this has what I've wanted from a streaming service like Netflix or Amazon, which they tend to not have, which is a really good back catalog of old films, many of which are pulled from the Criterion Collection. So I think it doesn't have the depth of the Criterion Collection there. Like, you're not going to really go down those deep rabbit holes that you get to go on Criterion, but it is a great starting point if you want to check out some of those movies. The Turner Classic Movie Archives are on there, and just through different right issues throughout the year. Warner Brothers has become the owner of Well, they were always Wizard of Oz, but no, that was MGM at first. So they have Wizard of Oz, they have Citizen Kane, they have Casablanca. So there is a fantastic library that most people have access to already just because they were HBO subscribers. A really big thing I am excited about. Studio Ghibli is a very big blind spot for me. I don't know if I've seen a single Studio Ghibli film. And I am really looking forward to sitting down with my kids and exploring those a bit. So that's what I'm excited about watching, is just dipping into some older stuff there and kind of catching up on some things I should have seen long ago.
Yeah, this was going to be, as long as they did this right, it's very appealing. Of course, when Warner bought Turner, God, that's over 10 years ago at this point now, right? That's maybe 20 years ago. Warner absorbed that impressive catalog, the catalog that, of course, Turner Classic Movies is built on. So I am curious to see how often they're going to make all those available, how often they're going to let TCM continue to show them now. And I'm also curious, they claim that they're still on exceedingly friendly full terms with the Criterion channel. So supposedly they're not going to be keeping things off of there.
That would be my hope.
Just because it's also on their service. They were relatively clear about that when the split happened, when Filmstruck died a couple years ago. That was the initial concern. It died because Warner was paying for the streaming. They were actually running the channel, even though they weren't programming it or anything. They were hosting it, and they dropped it because the big merger was happening. And they announced when Criterion announced that they still have the full cooperation of Warner Brothers. Just Warner wasn't in charge of actually streaming the stuff anymore.
Yeah, I'm really hoping it doesn't cut off any service there, that people don't kind of think, oh, I have HBO Max and I don't need Criterion, because you do need the Criterion channel if you love that stuff, because the special features and everything on there are fantastic. And of course, in about a year from now, you can listen to the We're Watching Here special episode where we take in all 4 hours of the Snyder Cut. Are you thrilled about that, Perry?
You realize this is only happening because we're in a pandemic, right? Warner Brothers has no outlet to make new material, so this is the only reason this is being thrown out there.
Yeah, it's literally because they couldn't get the 6 leads from Friends to sit in a room and talk about the work they did, that they're like, oh. And I love that there was this online movement that the Snyder Cut exists, and Warner Brothers' reaction or answer is kind of, yeah, it does exist. It's in our car. We're gonna go get it. I will watch that because I am a glutton for punishment, but man, I remember Batman vs. Superman, and I remember Justice League, and I am still having nightmares from those. So yeah, but it's a service that looks like a lot of fun. It looks like it has some really good things that I can't wait to check out. I kind of wish I was watching it right now instead of thinking about our movie of the week, because our movie this week is Kevin Smith's Mallrats. I am going to be the one to apologize first off on this, because Mallrats, when we started talking about films of 1995, I immediately looked at what was released and I said, oh, Mallrats! I haven't seen that in years. I think it kind of gets a bad rap, and I'd love to talk about Kevin Smith. And I am really excited to vent some frustration about Kevin Smith and even talk about some things I really like about him. But it did mean going back to watch Mallrats. For those of you who are not aware, obviously Kevin Smith's big breakthrough was Clerks, released at Sundance, made on a shoestring budget, ton of acclaim, becomes a cult hit. So Universal throws a bunch of money at him, and he decides to do Clerks in a mall for his second film. And it does get kind of a bad rap. It has kind of a cult following. There is a sequel apparently coming in the next year or two. So I thought, what the hell? We'll talk some Mallrats. So before we do that, though, Perry, what were your thoughts on Clerks? I'm curious about that, as kind of an entry point to this. Were you a Clerks guy when it came out?
I thought Clerks was Clerks is exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. It's a really great example of a low budget mid-90s indie first film. Mm-hmm. I like Clerks. I have no problem with it. I liked it at the time. I didn't love it. I didn't think it's this insanely great thing. I didn't think Kevin Smith was the voice of a generation. I like actors enough to want real actors in the film. But there are laughs still to be had in Clerks, and it's an incredibly charming piece of work. And it's and boy, short of Soderbergh's Kafka, I can't name a quicker classic sophomore slump than Mallrats.
I'm kind of with you on Clerks. I may not have seen it in about, I don't think I have seen Clerks since shortly after it hit. I don't think I saw Clerks since shortly after it hit VHS. So late 90s. It's been a good 20 years since I've seen it. I kind of felt the same way. It's a movie that makes me laugh. I think Kevin Smith is really good at dialogue when he wants to be. It's a movie that I tend to, if I want to see anything from Clerks, I'll pull up a clip on YouTube and I'm fine after like 5 minutes. But it does have a low rent charm to it. I think it's definitely a nice example of what you can do on a shoestring budget. And I think it's the movie Kevin Smith wanted to make. So it's fine. I actually think I may have seen Mallrats. Nope, I did see Clerks before Mallrats. But Clerks wasn't my first film by him. Mallrats was probably one of the third or fourth I saw by him. But yeah, I kind of liked Clerks. But I haven't felt any need to revisit it. Just like I hadn't, I had seen Mallrats after hearing that it was pretty bad. I remember kind of chuckling at it, and then I don't think I've seen that one in about 20 years. So this was a revisit I hadn't really been meaning to make for a few years, but I was down for it. But what did you think? What are your thoughts on Mallrats? I'll let you get this started.
I will confess I didn't go back and rewatch, Chris.
Okay.
I just couldn't.
That's advisable.
A, I didn't want to, and B, I couldn't find it anywhere, and I was not going to pay any money to rewatch it. Mm-hmm. So I remember finishing it and thinking, okay, well, he got that out of his system. It got him a little more money. He basically fused Clerks onto your traditional 80s teen sex comedy. So it's basically Fast Times at Ridgemont High with Clerks grafted over top of it, without all of Cameron Crowe's skills. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of laughs, but oh my god, it finished, and I remember thinking, and it's forever wedded with another film that came out near about the same time, because I had the same response to both of them. I felt like, okay, great, you made a spoof of a film that isn't being made anymore. No one was making those teen sex comedies, those 80s teen sex comedies in 1995. And so I don't know what you're doing. And that's exactly how I felt about Wes Craven's Scream.
No.
Other than the first 10 minutes of Scream, I finished with Scream thinking, okay, you deconstructed the genre that nobody's been doing for 10 years. Why? What is the point of that? I just felt it was like you accomplished everything you wanted to do in Scream. You accomplished with that opening with Drew Barrymore. The rest of it's just literally overkill. There's no reason. You accomplished it. And so that's kind of how I feel. Like if you take the best 10 minutes out of Mallrats, you accomplished it. You didn't need to make this whole movie.
We'll do the Scream battle another day, because I'm a big fan of Scream, but I have not seen I have not seen Scream in, again, probably about 10, 15 years. But I think you're right on Mallrats. It is
Scream is a better movie than Mallrats.
Yeah, well, yes. But yeah, I think it is Smith. Like, Kevin Smith is, like you said, he's trying to make a movie he grew up with, but with his, his very dialogue heavy take on it, and also his very flat aesthetic, which just does not work with the cartoon moments. Like, there's a Roadrunner cartoon basically trying to run through this movie with everything Jay and Silent Bob do. But I think he pulls it off better later in his career. But here everything looks so ugly that it drags everything else down. And I know it was his second film, but he's been kind of proud of his ugly films. So I'll still kind of I'll leave that dig against him. But I also just think, watching this, I don't remember in my first viewing hating so many of the characters so much. Jeremy London, I don't know if maybe someone else was signed up to play this role, but he is just such a bad fit for this, for Smith's universe. He looks miserable to be there every moment. He really looks like this is beneath him. And his character is an ass who gets redeemed for being an ass at the end of the movie. Like the whole reconciliation just drops everything that makes him such a dick. And I kind of hated him. I will say I think Jason Lee is the one exception, because I think Brody's the one character in that movie who consistently made me laugh, because Jason Lee plays him as a jerk, but he knows he's a jerk. Like, Brody knows how obnoxious and how horrible he is, and Jason Lee knows how horrible and obnoxious he is, so he leans into that. And so everything he said kind of got a chuckle from me, especially at the end on the game show when he's really leaning into that really heavy. I think that's the one performance in the movie that I was like, oh yeah, he knows what kind of movie he's making. And I think it's why Jason Lee has worked so well with Kevin Smith. He gets whatever wavelength he's on, and he's in tune with that. I don't think anyone else kind of understands what Smith is trying to do. I don't know if Smith understood what he was trying to do.
As a casting session for Chasing Amy, the movie's an absolute masterpiece.
Yeah.
You could convince me that the film's worthy of its existence just for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like you said, he got it out of his system. This is, although I don't know how you could have this film sitting in your system for that long, because there's not much there. Like, I feel like I look at Clerks, and whatever flaws Clerks has, that's kind of part of its charm. It's kind of grungy. It's really crude, but I get the feeling like that comes from an honest place. Like, that is the life Kevin Smith lived. That is how he talked with his friends. With Mallrats, I see this kind of, like you said, he's trying to cram that very awkwardly into a totally different genre, one that has probably a little more mainstream appeal. And it's just this really kind of acidic blend. Like, it made me icky a lot of the time. I also think there is a whole,
and that was before the stink palms. Right?
Well, there's a whole thread of this movie.
Stink palm or palm stink?
I think it was stink palm. But there's a whole thread of this movie. Palm, There's a whole thread of this movie that its comeuppance hinges on statutory rape. Like, and I don't understand who lets that pass, or it obviously would not get made today. But I don't like it. None of it is funny, and maybe I just got older, and maybe I would have thought that was funnier 20 years ago. I hope not. But it's this weird. I don't know. It's this weird obsession that Smith has with, being edgy, but it's not really edgy. It's just juvenile.
Well, it's his Catholicism at play. It is someone who loves to talk about sex and is frightened of it.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
To show it. But that's been his problem throughout much of his career. It just gets laid bare really obviously in this movie because the talk was so frank in Clerks and was more direct and wasn't there's that running gag in Mallrats about having sex in an uncomfortable place. I'm like, why? Clerks famously they took the MPAA to court to have them take away the NC-17 rating it got because of language. It didn't have an NC-17 for showing anything. It was just language, and they actually argued it. Well, Alan Dershowitz argued it. They brought the big guns, Miramax did, to make sure this was good publicity for the movie. And they got it released as an R without making a single cut to it. And then you watch this, and it's so weirdly hidden and cutesy and so much more repressed than Clerks was. It's such a disappointing second film.
It really is. And the reason I think it's interesting is because it kind of foreshadows this thing that I think Kevin Smith did later in his career was, this is a filmmaker who doesn't want to press himself too much. I think that just became his modus operandi about halfway through was, I'm not going to try much anymore. And he makes a whole second Clerks where the whole theme is, why be ambitious? Just hang out with your friends, do what you love, which is great life advice, but it makes for really bad art.
Well, it does in his hands.
Yes. Well, Adam Sandler as well. But, but I feel like Clerks 2 is kind of helps me understand where Kevin Smith went afterwards, which is just, I just want to do what I've been doing the way I've been doing it, and I don't want people to hassle me. But that's really how Mallrats feels, is kind of, though they gave me all this money, I'm just going to do the same thing. I think it's funny. He talks a lot about how Slacker influenced him. He came out of the screening of Slacker and was like, this is what I want to do. And I think he didn't realize that, Richard Linklater went on and pushed himself. He was actually interested in film and filmmaking, not just watching movies. He was someone who took chances and pushed the envelope. And for a few years, I thought Kevin Smith was on that. We can talk Chasing Amy and Dogma in a bit. But he hit a point where I think he hit some failure. Like, I think he did Jersey Girl, which was this film he apparently another one that he just had inside for years, but why? And he got pilloried for it, and then just was deciding, okay, well, snoochie booches, I'm going back to the well again, and that's what I'm going to do because it's safe, and I know I have a little audience there. But even here, you can just see I don't want to try too much. I don't know. There's not a ton that I would say about this film. It's more Kevin Smith that I'm interested in talking about. Although without him, we might not have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because he was the first one to get Stan Lee out there and do a cameo, which might be the best acted piece in the whole movie.
Fair. I would accept that. Yes. I would not argue that if someone felt that about the film. Yes, indeed.
But even with that, even with like the comic book stuff, you can feel this kind of tension where I feel like there's a movie there. Like, as much as Clerks was about, people sitting around and talking Star Wars, maybe it's funny to have people sit around and talk comic books. But you can feel that hesitancy because at that point, comic books are not a popular thing. So they get a few sentences. There's the Stan Lee subplot. But really then it's right back to the, dick and fart jokes.
And none of it is as smart as the Star Wars talk in Clerks.
Yeah.
Which is really funny.
It's he does a lot more like pop culture visual gags in this movie. But I just kind of hate the way he does movie homages, because his way of homaging a film is not to find a way to present his original material through that lens, but to say, hey, remember Batman? Here's a gag from Batman. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Like Batman. Here's I can't even remember what else was it. Here's a Beverly Hills 90210 joke. It makes no sense, but remember, get the joke? It's funny because it's the thing which he kind of does.
It's topical.
Yeah, he does it throughout his career. I think the only time I felt like he took a gag and wove it in a way that I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty clever, and he didn't bang it over my head, is Chasing Amy. There's a scene where everyone is talking about their sexual experiences. And
yes, and he does the Jaws thing.
Yes. That's the only time I thought he's handled it kind of deftly, instead of, oh, hey, look at this. It's a movie that just kind of grated on me. Although, again, I will say, I think Jason Lee, I wanted Brody to be the lead of this. And it feels like at times Smith did too, but I don't know if he had to lean on Jeremy London a bit more. But Brody is the only character in the movie who I'm like, oh, he's kind of funny and he's original. And Jason Lee is having a ball playing this. I want more of that. I even think Shannon Doherty's pretty good in it, with the way she reacts to them and the way that relationship is just so unhealthy, and they just lean into the unhealthiness of it. That was the one part that got me kind of laughing, was at the end when she's won over by how horrible he is.
I will admit I also have a soft spot for almost any appearance in any movie by Michael Rooker. So I'm really good with Michael Rooker as the bad guy.
He outclasses the movie. I do like Michael Rooker. I think he's the hard-ass dad in this movie, and he plays it really well. I do think he's funny. Unfortunately, he has to be on the bad end of the stink palm.
Of course. And who else would we want on the bad end of the stink palm but Michael Rooker? I mean, come on. That's...
Do you have much more to say about Mallrats, or do you want to move on to...
No.
I feel like... Okay, good, because the reason I wanted to bring up Mallrats...
I really don't.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Mallrats because I did want to be able to say... I think it is... Kevin Smith is one of those figures in the 90s in movies who I think is worth talking about, because Clerks was such a big breakthrough. But I think this kind of gave us a clue that maybe Clerks wasn't quite the ceiling, but it was there was definitely a basement that this movie hinted at. So I want to use this to kind of say I think it's fascinating that he went on after that, and maybe it was even the failure of people saying he's going back to the well that caused him to make Chasing Amy and Dogma, which I think are the two best movies he's made. I think Chasing Amy, which is a movie I wanted to revisit for this, but the time didn't really allow. I think Chasing Amy is probably his most honest and best and funniest film.
It's the best one, for sure, and it's still far from perfect. But it is, it is the only one that is genuinely emotionally ambitious. Like, he's really trying to get at something that we haven't really seen too often, if ever, in movies. And that's the close, that was it. He always talked about how much Slacker influenced him, but I'm thoroughly convinced that was just because, you can make a film for $8,000. Yep. Great. I don't think it had anything to do with the in this, other than you didn't even have to write a story. If he got close to Linklater, it was only ever with Chasing Amy, and it's not in Linklater's class. But it is really interesting. It's funny. It has a woeful climax that lasts. That the big payoff just has never worked for me. And every time I've seen it, and it's always a letdown. It doesn't feel honest. It doesn't feel real. It feels completely contrived. And that's awful, because even the denouement afterward works when they see each other again. It is poignant. And they're really good performances. It might be my favorite work by Ben Affleck ever as an actor. I don't think I have a problem saying that. It's certainly Joey Lauren Adams' finest hour. And it has all of the lo-fi charm of Clerks with a better script and better actors. It is a really good, it is his best movie.
I think it's coming in a little bit clearer now that I saw Clerks, and I remember thinking, oh, okay, that kind of made me laugh. But, it was not like it had been built up for me that this is the funniest movie ever. This is amazing. And I was just kind of like, okay, that's funny. But I feel like when I saw Chasing Amy, it was at a time when I was starting to kind of take a few more risks in what I was watching. And I remember just that movie hit me really hard. Like, oh, okay, here's someone who is writing very smart, talking about relationships in a way that at that point I hadn't really seen on film, because Kevin Smith was also kind of my gateway to indie film. And it made me feel something. Like, I'm like, oh, this is a movie where I like these characters. I feel like he's saying something. There's a personality to this movie. So going back and watching Mallrats, I was like, oh, there's none of that there. I love Dogma. I just revisited Dogma last year. And I think that is messier than Chasing Amy. It is a messy little movie, but I kind of love it for that because it is the most ambitious thing he has made. It is him taking ideas that I don't, could only come from this mix of pop culture obsession, Catholic upbringing, and kind of melding together to make basically a comic book theology movie. That is just this weird, funny thing that I really love. And again, I think I've talked about this on the podcast. It was one of my first times being able to see, so we can talk about religion and we can kind of laugh about religion, and that's okay. And it still can end up in a place where it makes me think a bit. And so I kind of hold those still. I mean, and Dogma was 21 years ago. That's like, to me, the pinnacle of his career, those two films. Because then after that, it was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which I think it has some really fun moments. I think it's a fun little cartoon, but it's definitely a come down.
It's got a great fart joke in it. It's got a 5-star fart joke in it. That's not a little thing. It's hard to pull off a really good fart joke. There's a great fart joke in that movie.
I don't know if I remember the fart joke in that movie. I remember that
I would argue it's the other moment where he successfully rips something else off from the popular culture. It's the redo of the scene from Entrapment.
Okay. Yes.
Where she's got to silently and quietly move around. Yes, and she succeeds in doing it, and then rips one. That's good. That was a long take to set that up. I appreciate that kind of effort and care that gets put into a fart joke. If only he would put that much effort and care into his characters.
See, and actually, thinking of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I think back to Mallrats, because watching Mallrats, I liked what he was going for conceptually, with the idea that Jay and Silent Bob are these cartoon characters who just kind of wander in and out of his movie and have their own weird adventures. I don't think it works in Mallrats because I don't think at that point he has the chops to make it as cartoony and frenetic as it needs to be. It's just kind of weird and out of place. But I think Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is the movie that he thought he was making throughout Mallrats. It's Jay and Silent Bob having their little cartoon adventure, and it works so much better in that movie. I don't think that's a great movie, but I do remember laughing pretty hard at that. But then, that was supposed to be his end to that, and then Jersey Girl, I think that's where the wheels came off. Yeah.
Living proof where even when he's given a world-class cinematographer, he can't make an interesting-looking movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember much about Jersey Girl at all, and I know I saw it opening night because I was like, Kevin Smith, serious-ish movie. I'm going to love this. This is going to be great. And I just remember it kind of landing like a lead balloon. But I remember him talking that up, that this was his... this was, I think, he thought going to be his big mainstream breakout. He was going to, make a lot of money with this. This might be his Oscar movie. And instead, it came out the same time as Gigli, which didn't help. But I think Jersey Girl's a lot better than Gigli. But it just...
I don't.
Oh, really?
I don't. I would much rather watch Gigli again. Oh, I'm not saying Gigli's any good, but Gigli's terribleness is unique and impressive.
That is
where
true.
Jersey Girl is a complete bore.
Okay.
A complete bore.
Yeah, it's basically Kevin Smith making a family movie at that point. Jersey Girl is. I mean, it's a PG-13 movie with George Carlin. I guess Bill and Ted had him, and that's PG. But and I think that broke something in him, because he is notoriously not good with criticism, and I think he thought this was going to be it. This was going to be his acceptance, and then instead it's Clerks 2 right after that, which is another one I know I've seen. I think I own it somewhere.
Well, I want to pick over the dead carcass of Jersey Girl just a little bit more.
Sure.
Because it contains the single... I can tell you the sequence in the movie where he dies as an artist, where he's truly done and never recovered. And he's committed the same mistake at least one important time after that. This is a man who was lauded for dialogue, right? Mm. This is what he can do. He can write dialogue. I'm not saying it's always great, but he's comfortable writing it. He can give it to actors who know how to deliver it, and it's at least talk. That's what we know he can't make a series of interesting images, so he can at least string together words. The key moment, I think about halfway through the movie, I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater, is when Ben Affleck has to deliver this impassioned speech, right, to the group of people that's going to win them all over. He's an ad man, and he's come home to talk to the workers somewhere. I don't even remember the plot. I don't care. But if you remember the sequence in the movie, it totally dumb shows it. Like, you don't get any actual dialogue from him. You just get a series of, as I remember in my mind, like fades to the audience just being enraptured by what he's saying, and you never get to hear what he says. Like, he even backs out of doing the one thing he's supposedly good at, writing. He cannot make himself write this speech. Like, what? You don't even care. You can't even try to do what you do best at this point. And that was where I was like, no, you're done. You have nothing in the tank. You don't care.
Oh,
you are too afraid.
He had something in the tank because he's been going for however many more years. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying, and I totally agree.
Nothing worth looking at. Yeah, yes.
It's
a really awful movie.
It's really bad. I do remember a part with Will Smith, and I'm not saying I remember that part being good or bad. I just remember randomly Will Smith showing up, talking, and then leaving. That is my memory of Jersey Girl, is an awkward Will Smith scene, and then 2 hours padded around that somehow. How do you feel about Clerks 2?
He's basically doing the Charlie Sheen scene from Ferris Bueller. That's all it is. That's exactly what it is. He just shows up at the end to drop the pearls of wisdom that allows the character that's behaved one way the entire movie to suddenly behave another way. That's all it is.
How do you feel about Clerks 2?
I don't remember a thing about Clerks 2. I saw it in the theater. I remember Rosario Dawson's in it, and there's some joke about kids even being younger than them working at fast food. And otherwise, isn't there a dance sequence to like ABC? There
is a dance sequence. I remember watching that, and I think when I saw that, I was fairly into Clerks 2. And I think there was a part of me just thinking, oh, Kevin Smith, he's going back and doing what he does best. He's just going back and doing what he does. But, it has a color palette to it, which Clerks doesn't have. But yeah,
that's true. It does.
And it's a very bright, and actually I remember thinking it's a bright film. I don't want to say it's well photographed because I honestly don't remember it as much. I remember laughing. I remember there were Lord of the Rings and Star Wars jokes. But I do remember it was that feeling of, I stumbled bad, so I need to go back and do the thing that made me famous. And then it literally ends with, the whole plot for Dante in that movie is he's getting ready to grow up, to get married and move on and get a new job and everything. And the movie ends with him dumping his girlfriend, deciding to buy the convenience store, and just work at the convenience store for the rest of his life. Which, again, maybe someone could make that work, but it just at that point feels like Kevin Smith going, I know where I belong, which is sad to me because one thing I've left out of this is, as many problems as I have with his movies, I like Kevin Smith, the person and the personality, quite a bit.
I do too.
I think there's an alternate universe where he never made movies and became a stand-up comic, and he was beloved for that. I spent a weekend in Akron by myself, Akron, Ohio, by myself, because I had tickets to go see him do one of his shows, and it was fantastic. And I wish he could bottle that talent he has. And again, he created the podcast empire, so he's definitely known that's one of his strong suits. But I wish he would show that ingenuity and that passion in his movies. And I just feel like it's bummed me out to look at his last 12-year filmography. I feel like Zack and Miri Make a Porno is the high point. And I don't know how much of a high point that is. I
would argue that movie has his single greatest achievement in it.
Oh, yeah?
Honestly. writingly and cinematically, the payoff, the scene when they finally do have sex, is absolutely a wonderful piece of emotionally smart, cinematically smart, character-driven revelation about human behavior. It's his finest moment. It's not worth digging through the whole movie to get to it. And especially now, it's hard to fathom. I mean, what was that? 2007, I want to say.
2008.
Is that about right?
2008.
For a year on that. 2008.
Yep.
So that's like the last time that you were going to get Seth Rogen and not cede to him all of the power and control. I mean, if nothing else, that film should let you know how really talented Seth Rogen is. Not because he's great in the movie, but because all of the stuff that he's written and produced and directed himself since then is so much better.
Oh yeah.
than that. It is. You're right. It is the only one of those films, the films we're going to talk about next, that I would tell anybody to, if you were interested, to check it out. It's not a bad movie. It's not a good movie, but it's not a bad movie.
It might be the only movie that has ever almost gotten me excommunicated from my church. I remember I saw Zach and Miri make a porno, and I wrote a review. And from what I remember, I did write a pretty positive review of it. And I think my headline might have been "Go see porno" or something like that.
Nice.
Well, the problem was some people from my church lived in the community where I wrote. And I got about 3 or 4 angry calls from people at my church asking what I was doing recommending this movie to them. So that's why that movie stands out. But I also remember at that time, that is about the same time Judd Apatow was really gaining steam, because that would have been a few years after 40-Year-Old Virgin had come out.
Yeah.
And I remember at that time there was kind of this attitude coming from Kevin Smith that, well, Judd Apatow's doing what I've been doing all along, but when you have those lined up next to each other, and you compare, a Mallrats to a 40-Year-Old Virgin or Knocked Up, I think Smith's flaws stand out so much more, because Judd Apatow, he can write circles around Kevin Smith, but his movies are also, his characters are often juvenile slackers, but there is growth that comes out of that. And he's a filmmaker who has wanted to grow and also wanted to just put other people up and get them out in front of the camera. And he's just done such a great job discovering people that it almost feels like Seth Rogen's doing Kevin Smith a favor almost, to kind of say, I'll throw you a bone with this. I remember those really, that standing out really strongly to me, that, I used to love Kevin Smith, but I think Judd Apatow's actually showing me how it's done. And I remember that standing out very clearly at that point. And I think his next film, Cop Out, maybe we did an episode a few months ago where we talked about our favorite cinematic experiences going into the movie theaters, having the best time in theaters. Cop Out is actually, I think Cop Out is the single worst experience I have ever had at a movie theater.
How could the movie be made worse for you? And I should say, I'll be honest up front, I'm joking. I've never seen Cop Out.
Oh my gosh.
I was completely over both him and Bruce Willis at that point. I was like, I could not care less about this.
Cop Out, there was no movie where I was more on board with wanting to like it. I wanted Kevin Smith to have his big comeback. I have been a Bruce Willis fan longer than it's advisable. I really like Tracy Morgan. And yet I have never seen a movie try so hard to throw jokes at you and them just bounce off the screen. And it was the most stone-faced audience I've ever seen. And it was just, I did not laugh once. It was, none of the jokes are clever. Bruce Willis, and Kevin Smith has been very open that he hated working with Bruce Willis on this movie. But when you listen to Kevin Smith tell the story, you're realizing, no, I think Bruce Willis just figured out that you didn't know what you were doing, and doesn't want to. Doesn't want to deal with that. I mean, he could have also been doing a Payday performance too, because Bruce Willis loves to sleep on camera. But I feel like Tracy Morgan maybe had one line that made me laugh. And if Tracy Morgan can't make me laugh throughout a movie, it's doing something very wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. The bad blood from the set was out before the movie came out. So that's that's just unbelievable that wouldn't have been squashed. That if they thought this was any good, they would have buried that, or they would have amped it up even more to make it a selling point. But oh my God, it's such a I never had any interest ever.
And then I
didn't jump off the Kevin train for good yet.
Oh, can't wait. His next one was
one more for that to happen.
Would it have been his next one, Red State?
Yes.
Yep. That was when I jumped off as well. Red State was, again, there is no movie that could have been set up more for me. Kevin Smith trying to make a horror movie. Maybe it wouldn't work, but I was kind of intrigued. Kevin Smith making a movie about a Westboro type cult. Oh yeah, I'm there for that. I was anticipating this movie. I would have been there opening night, except he did that whole thing where he was going to sell the movie and then bought it and four-walled it, which he always knew he was going to do.
Yep. And
then I've never seen a movie chicken out of its premise so quickly. He's not a filmmaker who knows tension or horror. It just sits there. And from what I remember, it ends everything. It wraps everything up with a character telling us what happened in the last 5 minutes. It wastes John Goodman.
Yes.
Yeah, that was where I jumped off. You said that's where you did too?
And again, yeah, and it was exactly that moment when they have set up this fantastic final confrontation that the bells go off and there's a smash cut to the FBI agent telling us what happened.
Yep.
I'm like, did you run out of money? Did you literally run out of money before getting to shoot the final thing? Or were you afraid to shoot the final thing? I just don't. It's just. I even tried with. What the hell was that next one? Seal? Flipper? What the fuck was that thing called?
Tusk.
I got 30 minutes into Tusk, and I was like, oh, God, I hate this, and turned it off. I don't. You lost. Do you know, Chris, what somebody has to do to make me turn off a movie in the middle of it? I don't. I found out with that movie. It practically never happens. I can stick through anything. Oh, God, that movie's terrible.
I have not seen it because I'm very hesitant to go see a movie where the behind-the-scenes notes are basically, oh, yeah, we were talking about this on our podcast and just decided to make it. Because that's exactly how Tusk started out, was him talking on his podcast and deciding there. And from what I've heard, again, I haven't seen Tusk, but I've heard that the end credits, instead of music over the end credits, he plays that podcast episode.
Brilliant.
Yeah. The thing with Red State, going back to that, have you heard about what his original ending to that was?
No. I have not.
It was basically going to be, you hear the trumpets going off, and instead of it being a bunch of stoners just playing a prank, it was the real apocalypse. And, the angel of death comes down and strikes.
So he was... So he basically was... He was going to flip the end of the Von Trier film. He was going to flip the end of Breaking the Waves.
Yes. And I don't know if Kevin Smith could do that, but it's better than John Goodman saying, "Here's what happened."
I have to admit, Kevin Smith in 1995 doing a comedic version of the storyline in Breaking the Waves makes a lot of sense. I gotta be honest. That's not the worst pitch I've just come up with right now.
I have not seen Yoga Hosers, but from what I understand, he runs around as a Nazi sausage. And that is basically Clerks up north with Nazi sausages.
And his daughter and more Johnny Depp.
Yes. Yeah, the Johnny Depp thing I don't understand either. I know their kids go to school together, and that's kind of how he gets him in his movies.
Johnny Depp, I don't understand anymore either. It's fine. It's not even a Johnny Depp thing. I don't understand what Johnny Depp is doing at all in life or his art.
You know what, though? I will say a few nights ago I did show my son Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. He's still fantastic in that one. That is still a movie that I like, but that was also the end of the Depp train there. Right after that, when they backed that money up for him.
Just last weekend, I rewatched. I'm pretty sure I might be forgetting something in the filmography, but the very last time I thought Johnny Depp was great in a movie, and that was his cameo in 21 Jump Street.
That is a fantastic cameo and a fantastic movie.
It's so good.
Yeah,
yes,
I like that one a lot. Yeah, and then his most recent movie was Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, which I know, as of our last conversation, you have not seen, correct?
I have not, but that is because I have a very dear friend of mine, Jen. Shout out to Jen, who we have a deep history and love for Kevin Smith, and we promised we were going to watch it together. So even though it's sitting there on Prime, I have not watched it, and not out of any I'm not watching this at all sentiment. I will watch you go to the well one more time and hear the bucket scrape against the dry ground, but only if I can do it with one of my dear friends with me.
I believe I talked about it on the podcast. I saw it a few months ago. I think it was one of the movies I rented before I realized I'd be stuck inside watching movies for 3 months. And it's the best thing he's made in 10 years, but I mean, if you've listened to us for the last hour, you know that that's not the highest praise in the world.
It is a low bar.
It is very weird to see a very thin Silent Bob and a very old Jay, which kind of casts a pall of sadness over the whole thing. That maybe made me give it a few sympathy laughs. But one thing I think Kevin Smith has done in recent years, especially since I know he's had a heart attack, he's had some health issues, he's really become a very, very sincere in a lot of his conversations. And it is weird. There is a sincere streak that runs about 15 minutes in the Jay and Silent Bob Reboot that I honestly was kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, that's actually a very heartfelt thing that I did not expect from this franchise. It's
that's intriguing to me. I would like to see that.
There's an interesting direction. I mean, and his lineup is Helena Handbag, which I have no idea what that is, and of course Clerks 3 and Mallrats 2.
Oh God,
yeah,
that'll never happen.
Oh, he keeps talking about
Mallrats 2 will never happen.
He just finished the script he announced a few weeks ago. I remember seeing that news article, and it's a more bittersweet movie called Twilight of the Mallrats. I don't even, having just watched Mallrats a few weeks ago, I don't know what a somber, to me, the saddest thing about a Mallrats movie would be that those characters are still alive and still hanging out and going to the mall when they should, they should all be in jail by now or something. Yeah. But I do know he's done a lot of TV in the last few years.
I mean, he's dead of some sort of E. coli infection, right? I mean, at the very least. That's...
Well, yeah. But I mean, it's like he keeps doing sequels to movies when he keeps continuing the characters through everyone else's film, which I guess is just what Marvel does. But they're kind of good at it. But yeah, I don't know the appeal for a Mallrats 2. God, I kind of regret picking this movie.
And I want to, and I agree with about his live stuff is great. He's a fabulous talker, and even if you've seen one of those shows, it's worth seeing another one. Like, he's got so many good stories and knows how to hold a room, and that holds true on his commentary tracks. The commentary track for Jersey Girl is so entertaining. You're like, how did you make a movie this bad if you can be this funny? Like, I don't understand at all. I've listened to the Jersey Girl soundtrack. I did not watch the movie this time, but yes, I did listen to the commentary track, and it's like, wow, you hate that it's so bad and you're eaten up about it, but even in this moment, he tells this amazing story about there's a cut of the little girl in the movie. There's like there's a cut to her, and she has this surprised look on her face, and he goes on this 5-minute riff. And I think Ben Affleck's doing it with him, where they talked about how they had an idea to recut the entire movie as a remake of Village of the Damned, where just cut to her and her eyes looking like that, and then have a shot of Ben Affleck like being thrown like by nothing into a wall, and it's really well done and so much funnier than anything that he put in a film over the last 20 years. It's such a shame, and it's so weird. He's become famous and is good at so many things other than the thing he originally became famous for. I don't know anybody else that's managed to pull that off quite like that. It's almost impressive.
And the thing is too, I follow him on Facebook because I do think he's a fun follow on those platforms. He writes a ton, and some of it's really funny, some of it's really insightful. And I remember him posting pictures and videos throughout the shoot of Jay and Silent Bob reboot. And he had just had his heart attack about the time they started shooting, and it was just filled with so much joy that he was making movies with his friends. He buried the hatchet with Ben Affleck. And I found myself, I'm like, I want to root for this guy. I would love nothing better than for an old Kevin Smith to deliver something that knocks my socks off. But I don't know that he has it in him anymore. I think some people come out and do a few movies and they get whatever they need to say out of their system. And I think he's one of those guys. I think he's made his movies, he's made his statements, and I don't know that he has another great one in there, and I am happy to be proven wrong if he wants to do that.
If he could only collaborate, if he would give himself over to somebody and work on a script with somebody who could complement what he does well, mm-hmm. I think the world is there. He just doesn't care. He's not. That's the thing that's aggravating. He is absolutely the quintessential cinema slacker.
Yeah. I mean, at least he's on brand.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah,
he needs it.
I've heard very good things about his TV work. I know he's directed a few episodes of like The Flash and The Goldbergs. And I think there's something to what you're saying, because I think TV is often it's a medium where you have to come in and a showrunner is telling you, this is what we need you to do. It has to line up with this. And they put a rein on those instincts. And I wonder if that's maybe the best place for him, is other people's properties with someone else kind of keeping him in check.
And he can cut to a joke.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do in a sitcom, is know how to cut to the joke.
Maybe they even let him bring Jay and Silent Bob Wander in for a frame, because I know they've wound up... they somehow ended up, to bring this full circle, Jay and Silent Bob somehow ended up in a Scream movie.
Yes, they did, didn't they?
Which was about the time
Miramax.
Yep. About the time I gave up on Scream. So... Do we have anything else to say about Kevin Smith?
No,
I don't think we do.
No, we don't. We've said nothing that Kevin Smith won't say much more interesting on his own.
Exactly.
Over the years. But yes.
Well, that's our second of our 5 from 95. And next week, Perry, I'm really excited for our next one, because it is a movie that you suggested that I have to admit I hadn't even heard of until you suggested it. Why don't you tell the fine folks what it is?
This is 1995's Smoke, directed by Wayne Wang, and one of the few films you'll ever see that the film by credit is shared by the director and the writer. It is a film by Wayne Wang and Paul Auster, and it's based on a Paul Auster short story. And it is, I'm so excited to talk to someone who's never seen it before. It is. It's a charmer. It's a winner.
I am really looking forward to that.
Seek it out. I'm happy that you're going to give it a look, and I hope others out there do too. It was my favorite film that year. Just sort of because I have a love for little films with really smart talk in it. 25 years later, yes, Seven's a better movie, but I I have a deep, deep love for Smoke, and I'm very excited for people to see it. One of my very favorite Harvey Keitel performances, William Hurt in a gear that he hasn't quite done before. Fantastic. Forrest Whitaker, Stockard Channing, Jared Harris in a very small part. That's great. Giancarlo Esposito, and the first time I ever saw Harold Perrineau, who's gone on to do great work on Oz on HBO and a bunch of stuff. I like this movie a ton, Chris.
I am really excited to see that. In the meantime, we know we're both at home, but where else can people find you, Perry?
You can find me on Facebook under my name. You can find me at Twitter at Perry Loves Film, and you can hear me every Friday morning on the Lucy and Lance Show on Ann Arbor, 1290 AM. And if you don't live near Ann Arbor, you can actually find that online as well and hear my segments where I gab about something movie-related every Friday morning.
You can find me on Twitter at Mere Christianity. You can find me on Facebook, probably complaining about politics or something like that. But you can also find my reviews at BHM Pop Culture. Same place you can find this podcast. Right now I know there's a review of The Lovebirds up there, and I am currently doing a revisit of all of Steven Spielberg's movies. I started with Duel, and I'll be going straight through the West Side Story in December. So give them a read. And,
God, you're really going to do all of them?
You're going to
really do all of them? You're going to do 1941?
Oh, 1941 is in 2 weeks. Yeah.
You're going to do Always? Oh, God, Always is so terrible.
There wasn't a lot of thought put into this.
Hook? God, you're going to suffer through Hook again? Jesus. I feel bad for you.
I
feel bad for you.
Well, I like people to watch me suffer, but also it means I did get to watch Jaws again, and that kind of makes up for it all, just being able to watch Jaws once more. And Close Encounters is up next, and so there's some stuff I really like in there. But listen along, I'll be talking about the good and the bad. It'll be at BHM Pop Culture, and we will see you when the next episode hits.